Can you be my mum for just one day? The lonely female CEO froze when she saw the girl's necklace. The private jet had landed just after sunset, and the city lights of Los Angeles glittered below like fragments of memory. Isabella Hartman stepped out of the terminal, her pale blonde hair catching the soft glow of overhead lights. At 28, she was already the youngest CEO in Hartman Group's history, polished, poised, and always in control. But tonight there were no cameras, no assistants, no press waiting outside when the driver approached her with a polite, "Where to, Miss Hartman?" She hesitated. Then softly, "Riverside Park, downtown." He blinked. "The one near the old fountain?" She nodded, her voice quiet. "I just need a walk." The car cut through the pulsing city, its windows dimmed from the world. Isabella stared out, her mind drifting far from the towers and deadlines of Zurich. It had been 5 years since she'd stepped foot in that park. 5 years since Daniel Rivers, since everything. The park was quiet when she arrived. Familiar trees lined the walkway, their branches reaching toward one another like old friends. She dismissed the driver and walked alone, the click of her heels muffled by fallen leaves. Reaching the old wooden bench by the fountain, she paused. It was worn now, cracked slightly at one end, just as it had been the last time she saw him. She sat slowly. The scent of wet earth filled the air. The hush of the city behind her faded, until all that remained was memory. She could almost hear his voice, the warmth of it curling around her like sunlight. Daniel with his sunburned skin, his vineyard calluses, his impossible dreams, a house, a garden, a life they never got to live. Footsteps pulled her back. A little girl, no more than 4, ran across the path, her tiny arms hugging a threadbare teddy bear. Curls framed her round face, and her cheeks were pink from play. She slowed when she spotted Isabella and stared. Isabella smiled gently. "Hello there." The girl tilted her head as though studying her. After a moment, in the softest voice, she asked, "Can you be my mum for just one day?" Isabella blinked. "What did you say?" The girl repeated it without hesitation. "Just one day. I don't have a mummy, but you look nice." The words stunned her. Her throat tightened. She crouched slightly. "That's very sweet. But surely you have someone. A daddy maybe?" The girl nodded. "Just me and daddy. He works a lot. I talk to my bear sometimes, but he doesn't answer." The innocence in her voice made Isabella's heart ache. She felt tears burn at the corners of her eyes. "What's your name?" she asked. "Mia." The girl beamed. "What's yours?" Isabella. Mia grinned. "That's pretty." They sat like that for a beat, two strangers oddly connected. Then Mia's teddy slipped from her arms. Isabella reached to pick it up, but her gaze caught on something around the girl's neck. A necklace, thin red thread, a turquoise stone. Isabella froze. Her pulse roared in her ears. She knew that necklace. She had made one exactly like it with her trembling hands. For the baby she'd carried, the baby she'd never seen. The baby they said had died. "No," she whispered. Mia looked up. "Are you okay, Miss Isabella?" But Isabella couldn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on that stone. Her hand trembled. It wasn't possible. And yet, it was there. That exact necklace. The one she'd tied in hope, in fear, in love. Not a replica. Hers. Mia reached out again, her small hand gently tugging at Isabella's sleeve. "Will you?" she asked softly. "Be my mum just for one day?" Isabella tried to speak, but no words came. Only the sound of her heartbeat, loud and wild. The past, the one she had buried, now stood before her, wearing her hope around its neck. And it had a name, Mia. The lights of the penthouse flickered on with a quiet hum, but Isabella barely noticed. She stepped inside the sleek, sterile space that now felt colder than ever. The silence swallowed her whole as the door clicked shut behind her. Her heels echoed softly across the marble floor, but her steps were unsteady. She walked straight to her bedroom, past the untouched art, past the leather-bound books, past the view of the city glittering like a dream she no longer believed in. With trembling fingers, she knelt in front of a tall cabinet hidden behind a velvet curtain. She pressed her thumb to the lock of the safe embedded inside. A soft click, then the steel door swung open. Inside was a small white box. She pulled it out with both hands, her breath catching in her chest. It was a memory box, one she had packed away in the darkest chapter of her life. She had not opened it in years. She sat on the floor, the box on her lap. Slowly, she lifted the lid, a folded piece of paper on top, a sonogram image, dated exactly 5 years ago. Her baby, tiny, blurry, but unmistakably hers. Beneath it, a few worn pages from her old journal, scribbled entries, desperate and hopeful all at once. I will love you no matter what. He said he wants to build us a little garden. If I have to run, I will. This child will have love, even if I lose everything else. Her fingers trembled as she reached the bottom of the box. There it was, coiled carefully like a forgotten prayer. A red thread tied with the same knot, a turquoise stone in the center, exactly like the one around the little girl's neck. Her heart squeezed so tight it hurt. The memory crashed into her all at once. 5 years ago, a summer like no other, she had fallen in love with Daniel Rivers while he worked at her family's vineyard. He was kind, passionate about sustainable farming, and had a smile that made the world slow down. He brought her wildflowers every morning. He listened when no one else did. He saw her not as an eyes, not as a trophy, but as a person, and she had loved him back. When she discovered she was pregnant, she had been terrified, but also sure of one thing. She wanted the baby, and she wanted Daniel. They had made a plan. She would leave before her family found out. They would start over somewhere small, quiet, honest. But her mother had found out. Everything spiraled from there. They locked Isabella in the family estate, confiscated her phone, kept her under strict medical care. Her mother claimed it was to protect the company's reputation. But Isabella remembered the coldness in her voice. You were not throwing your life away for a gardener's child. When she went into labor early, they performed a C-section. She had been groggy, disoriented. Hours later, she woke up to her mother sitting by her bedside, face calm, words like ice. I am sorry, darling. The baby did not make it. It was a stillbirth. No one let her hold the child. No one even showed her a photo. She had screamed, pleaded, begged, then shattered. For months afterward, she barely ate, barely spoke. The doctors called it postnatal depression. She called it grief. Then one day, her mother sent her away to heal a private clinic in Switzerland. Months blurred into years. She never saw Daniel again, never heard anything from him. He must have hated her. She believed the lie that her child had died. But now that child had smiled at her in a park, worn the necklace she had made with her own hands, asked her to be her mother. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks as she sat on the cold floor, clutching the red string to her chest. Her baby was alive, and someone had stolen 5 years of love from both of them. Isabella rose slowly, as if awakening from a long nightmare. Her reflection in the window looked pale, haunted. But in her eyes now there was something else. Resolve. She would not run. She would not be silent. She would find the truth. She would find her daughter again, and no one, not her family, not the past, would stop her this time. The next morning, Isabella sat in her car, engine off, parked across the street from a modest apartment building in a rundown part of town. It was nothing like the places she usually found herself in. No doorman, no polished marble, no valet, just peeling paint, rusted balconies, and the sounds of children laughing somewhere behind the building. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. She was not sure what she expected. A stranger, a version of Daniel worn down by time. Then the door opened. He stepped out, holding a paper bag in one hand and Mia's tiny fingers in the other. Isabella froze. Daniel. Even from this distance, she knew it was him. His shoulders were broader now, his jawline sharper, his eyes lined with exhaustion and years of quiet battles. He wore a threadbare grey hoodie and jeans, faded from wear, but his posture was still proud, steady. Mia looked up at him, chattering happily about something, and he smiled down at her. That same warm, soul-deep smile Isabella remembered, the one that once made her believe in forever. Her hand flew to her mouth. She nearly stepped out of the car but stopped. Fear gripped her. What if he hated her? She had to leave. She reached for the keys. Then Daniel looked up. Their eyes locked. His smile fell away like a curtain dropping in a theater. He stopped in his tracks, still holding Mia's hand. His entire body stiffened. The bag in his hand slowly dropped to the ground. He did not move. He did not speak. For a second, Isabella thought he might not recognize her. But he did. The expression on his face shifted from confusion to disbelief, to shock, to something raw and indescribable. He knelt down beside Mia, whispered something to her. The little girl nodded and ran up the steps toward the apartment, vanishing through the door. Then Daniel turned and walked toward Isabella. Every step closer was a weight on her chest. When he stopped just a few feet away, she saw it all. The redness around his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the unspoken storm behind his silence. Isabella. His voice was like it had not said her name in years. like it hurt to remember how. She swallowed, her throat ocked. Daniel. There was a long pause. Neither of them moved. His voice cracked. You are alive. Tears welled in her eyes. I did not know what happened. They told me my baby died. Her voice broke. Daniel stared at her, jaw clenched, breathing hard. I waited, he said quietly, for days, weeks, no call, no word. Then they told me. He looked away, his fists clenched. They said, you died during surgery. I went to the hospital. They would not even let me see you. I thought you both were gone, she whispered. He exhaled a sharp, bitter laugh. I thought the same about you. She took a step closer, voice trembling. Mia, she is ours, isn't she? Daniel did not speak at first. Then slowly, he nodded. Yes. His voice dropped to a whisper. She is your daughter. Tears spilled freely down Isabella's cheeks. I have missed her entire life, she whispered. Because of lies. Because of control. Because they thought they knew better. Daniel's eyes burned with emotion. I held her that night. She was so small, so beautiful. I named her Mia, short for Amelia, the name we picked. Her knees nearly buckled. She remembered that name. She remembered saying it aloud under the stars. I wanted to tell her about you, he added, voice breaking. But how do you explain to a child that her mother died and then came back? She reached out gently, placing her hand over his. It trembled under her touch. I am here now, she said, and I want to make it right. I want to know her. I want to be her mother. Daniel looked at her for a long time. Then finally, his shoulders sagged. I do not know what this means, he said, for any of us, but she deserves the truth, and maybe we do too. They stood there in the fading sunlight, no longer strangers, not quite lovers, not quite a family, but something quietly mending, the kind of reunion stitched together by pain, time, and a child who unknowingly carried both of their hearts. Daniel opened the door to the apartment and stepped aside to let Isabella in. She hesitated, standing at the threshold, heart pounding. Then she crossed it. The inside was modest but warm, the kind of place that had been lived in, loved in, no matter how small. A soft rug covered the old wooden floor. A stack of storybooks sat neatly beside the couch. On the wall was a mural, clearly hand-painted, of a garden filled with flowers and stars. It looked like a dreamscape. She saw crayon drawings pinned to the refrigerator and a small child-sized table in the corner, with broken crayons scattered across it. Then her eyes landed on a piece of paper taped to the wall above Mia's bed. A child's drawing. It showed a little girl standing between two tall figures. One was clearly Daniel, the other was a woman in a blue dress with long golden hair. The figures were holding hands. There were hearts around them, and in crooked little letters the words, "My mummy in my dreams." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. Daniel stepped beside her, voice low. She draws her in everything. Different dress sometimes, but always blonde, always close. She never stopped believing. Her mom was still out there. Isabella reached out, fingertips brushing the edge of the drawing. She remembers, she whispered, even without knowing. Daniel nodded once. She asked me once why she dreamed of someone she never met. I didn't know how to answer. They sat down at the kitchen table. A quiet settled between them. Not heavy, not uncomfortable, but full of things unsaid. Regret hung in the air like dust in sunlight. Daniel finally spoke. I got a scholarship once. Agricultural sciences full ride. Isabella looked up. I turned it down when Mia came. I couldn't leave her behind. Worked nights at the warehouse. Took landscaping jobs on weekends. Anything to keep a roof over her head. His voice cracked just slightly. There were nights I held her while she burned with fever, and I only had enough for the cheap medicine. I prayed I wasn't making it worse. Isabella pressed a hand to her lips, pain rippling through her chest. I never wanted this. I never meant for either of you to suffer. Daniel shook his head, eyes still on the table. I know, but it doesn't change the years we lost. She looked at him, voice trembling. Did you ever hate me? He paused, then lifted his gaze to meet hers. Yes, her breath caught. But not because you left, not because I thought you abandoned me. His voice softened. I hated myself for not being strong enough to find you, for believing them, for giving up. There it was, the heart of the wound, not betrayal, not anger, just sorrow, so much sorrow. Isabella stood walking slowly to the window. Outside, Mia was playing with two neighborhood children, giggling as she chased a ball. Her little brown curls bounced with every step. She turned around, eyes wet. I want to be her mother, Daniel. not just for a moment, not for one sweet memory. I want to be in her life, really in it. I want to read her stories, braid her hair, kiss her goodnight. I want to make up for every second I missed. Daniel stood too. He walked to the window, standing beside her. He did not speak for a long moment. Then finally he said, "Then start with one day." She looked at him confused. "Give her a day. Let her decide if she wants you there the next." Isabella nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She turned back to the window, watching Mia run in the golden evening light. Her hands clenched softly at her sides, not from fear, but determination. On her lips was a quiet, wistful smile, but in her eyes a fire reignited, a yearning not for what was lost, but for what might still be made whole. The next morning, Isabella stood once again in front of the modest apartment door, her heart thudding with a rhythm she had not felt in years. In her hand was a small backpack. Inside were butterfly hair clips, a fairy tale book she had loved as a child, and a handkerchief she had embroidered with the letter M just hours ago. She barely had time to knock before the door swung open. "Are we going now? You promised." Mia launched into her arms, her giddy excitement melting every frozen piece of Isabella's heart. Isabella knelt and hugged her tightly. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm ready." Daniel appeared behind them, one hand still on the doorknob. He smiled faintly, then began to step back to give them space. But Mia looked up, her voice soft. "Daddy, can you come, too? I want both my parents today." Daniel froze. His eyes met Isabella's, surprised, unsure, yet softened by something quieter. Hope, or maybe fear. Isabella looked at Mia, then nodded. "Of course, sweetheart, if Daddy wants to come, too." Daniel paused, then smiled gently. "Let me grab my jacket." They set off side by side, a trio slowly remembering what family might feel like. At the city park, sunlight filtered through golden leaves. Isabella gently braided Mia's hair under a tree, while Daniel held up a mirror so Mia could admire the result. "You're the best mummy hairstylist ever," Mia giggled. Isabella blinked back tears and laughed. "Thank you, my little sunflower." Later at the ice cream shop, they shared a round table. Mia insisted on tasting from every cup, judging each flavor. "Hey, she ate mine twice," Daniel said. "No, she prefers strawberry, which was mine," Isabella teased. Mia grinned. "I love you both the same, but Mummy's spoon is just more fun." They all laughed, real bone-deep laughter. At a nearby toy store, Mia chose a doll with golden curls. "I'll name her Isabel," she said proudly. Daniel raised a brow. "That's a lovely name, because she has golden hair like Mummy." Both adults froze for a beat, then exchanged a look. Quiet, full, too deep for words. As the afternoon passed, they reached a small carnival. Mia spotted the Ferris wheel and squealed. "You have to ride it with me." Then, after a pause, "Wait, you two sit together. I'll sit with Teddy." Before they could respond, Mia darted to the next cabin, leaving them behind. Isabella looked at Daniel, half laughing, half embarrassed. "She planned that." He chuckled. "She is definitely your daughter." They boarded together. As the Ferris wheel climbed, the city unfolded below, glowing in warm amber light. A cool breeze brushed by. "She's happier than I've seen her in a long time," Daniel said. Isabella nodded, her voice caught. At the same moment, they reached to pull their coats closed, and their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. It was only a small touch, but it held memory, pain, and maybe something new. On the bus ride home, Mia leaned sleepily against Daniel. Isabella sat on her other side, fingers stroking her daughter's soft curls. As the bus rumbled on, Mia whispered, "Can you be my mum again tomorrow?" Isabella leaned in and kissed her temple. "As many tomorrows as you want, my love." Daniel heard it. He said nothing, but when he looked at Isabella, the walls behind his eyes had begun to crack. There was no longer hesitation, only quiet warmth. When they stepped off the bus, the sky was awash in the last golden light of day. Their shadows stretched together on the sidewalk, long connected to the world. They might have looked like any other family, but to them, that moment, that single ordinary day, was everything they had thought they lost. It began with a click. A distant snap of a hidden camera tucked behind a newspaper across the street captured the image of Isabella Hartman, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, kneeling beside a little girl with chestnut curls at a carnival game booth. In the next frame, she was smiling, holding the girl's hand. In the third, a man, plain shirt, worn jeans, stepped into the picture, his arm wrapped protectively around them both. 2 days later, the headline broke. Powerhouse CEO secretly raising love child with former farmhand. Then, another Golden Girl's hidden daughter, and the blue-collar ex. It was everywhere. TV, talk shows, news alerts, social media. The internet did not sleep. In her office, Isabella stared at the screen. Mia's face front and center. Her child dragged into a spectacle. She had barely processed it when the next blow landed. Isabella Hartman showed up at Daniel's apartment, flanked by 2 attorneys. She did not knock. Daniel opened the door and froze. Vivon stood in a tailored coat, her expression razor-sharp. "You should have stayed hidden," she said coldly. "Now you've dragged my daughter and your bastard child into a disaster." Daniel clenched his jaw. "She's your granddaughter," Vivon scoffed. "That child should never have been born, and you know it." The lawyer beside her opened a folder. "We're filing for emergency custody on behalf of the maternal family. You're unfit, unstable employment, no health care, no legal guardianship." Daniel didn't speak, but his silence screamed. Minutes later, Isabella arrived breathless, her fury radiating. "Mother," she snapped, "you're done here." Vivon turned. "I'm saving you, Isabella, before you destroy your legacy over a mistake." "A mistake?" Isabella's voice broke. "Mia is not a mistake. She's the only thing in my life that makes sense. You have a board, a billion-dollar empire. What happens when the world sees this scandal? Let them." Vivon narrowed her eyes. "So, you choose the child." "I choose her always." Vivon left, but the storm didn't. By week's end, Daniel was placed on unpaid leave from his landscaping job. Parents whispered at Mia's preschool. Someone scrawled charity case on their apartment door. Mia came home crying. A classmate told her she didn't have a real mummy. Daniel held her close, whispered calm lies, and tried not to fall apart. Then he started packing. "I can't let this hurt her," he told Isabella. "Or you, maybe if I take her away for a while." "No," she didn't waver. "We're done hiding." That night, she sat in her office alone with a storm of media requests. She made the call. The next morning, the press packed into the Hartman Group building. Cameras, reporters, expecting denial, spin, maybe resignation. What they got was Isabella. She stepped to the podium in a plain navy dress. No script, no jewelry, just truth. She looked directly into the lenses. "That little girl is my daughter, and no one, not family, not fear, not power, will take her from me again." Silence, then flashes, dozens. "In a world obsessed with image," she said, "I lost everything trying to live for others. I won't lose her again." Tears welled, but she did not break. "Her name is Mia. She is my daughter. I love her. That's all that matters." No one expected it, but the world listened. Within hours, #1 support Isabella trended worldwide. Celebrities voiced support. Single parents, adopts, working mothers flooded social feeds with stories of their own. Daniel watched from the couch. Mia curled up against him, thumb mouth. He had never felt more terrified, and he had never loved her more. Mia's FTH birthday arrived with sunshine and balloons. The Hartman estate, once a place of cold board meetings and marble silence, was now filled with laughter, ribbons, and the scent of vanilla frosting. Isabella had turned the grand garden into a child's wonderland, complete with fairy lights, pony rides, and a table covered in pink cupcakes. Mia wore a lavender dress and a tiny tiara. She beamed from ear to ear as friends from school and neighbors sang to her. But between the smiles and squeals, she kept glancing at the gate. Isabella noticed. As the sun dipped low, the party began to quiet. Guests trickled out. Wrapping paper littered the lawn. Mia sat on the porch steps, her tiara crooked, her smile dimmed just a little. "Mummy," she asked softly, "is Daddy coming?" Isabella knelt down beside her and tucked a loose curl behind her ear. "I think he's celebrating in his own way today," she said gently. Mia nodded, but her eyes stayed on the gate. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, Isabella carried a drowsy Mia inside. They passed by the front door, and there it was, a small package, no name, just brown paper tied with simple twine. Isabella picked it up slowly. Her heart skipped a beat. Inside was a familiar friend, Mia's old teddy bear, worn, stitched, loved, and now carefully restored. Its missing button I replaced. Its torn ear patched with fabric from a shirt Isabella recognized. One Daniel used to wear. Mia gasped when she saw it. "Teddy, he's back." There was a folded paper tucked beneath the bear's arm. A note handwritten in the soft looping letters Isabella had not seen in weeks. Happy birthday, my little princess. I may not be beside you, but my heart is always with you. Love always, Daddy. Isabella felt the world still around her. The hallway was silent. Mia clutched the bear tightly, already whispering to it like an old friend, but Isabella couldn't take her eyes off the letter. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held it. She knew that handwriting, that quiet, steady strength behind each word. Daniel had not come, but he had not forgotten. He had given her daughter the one gift no one else could, a piece of their past, mended with love, handed back with care. And he had done it quietly, without applause, without claiming space in the spotlight, because that was who he was. Isabella stood at the window, let her pressed to her chest, watching the empty street beyond the gate. Somewhere out there, he was walking away again, not for himself, but for them, for Mia, for her. And this time, she could not let it end that way, because love, true love, was not about possession. It was not about showing up in photographs, or sharing every celebration. Sometimes love was a mended teddy bear and a note left in silence. But sometimes love was also fighting to stay. She turned to Mia, now fast asleep on the couch, arms wrapped around Teddy like nothing else in the world mattered. And she whispered, not to the child, but to the man she knew was still out there. You gave her what no one else could, but it's time someone gave that love back to you. Her decision was clear. The next chapter was no longer about fear or hiding or letting go. It was about bringing him home. 1 year later, the Hartman Group welcomed a new CEO, and Isabella Hartman was not her name. The press had speculated endlessly. Burnout, scandal, retirement. But Isabella had simply stepped down because she had found something far more important than power. She had found purpose. Together with Daniel, she founded the Lighthouse Project, a non-profit dedicated to supporting single parents and abandoned children. Their mission was simple. No child should ever feel unwanted, and no parent should ever feel alone. They built the headquarters in the very same town where they had once been torn apart. A symbolic choice, a place of ending, reborn as a beginning. The building itself was modest, but full of life. Murals painted by local artists, children's laughter echoing down the halls, shelves lined with storybooks and second-hand toys. Isabella oversaw fundraising and operations. She held donor meetings, wrote grants, and managed a small but passionate team. Daniel, on the other hand, worked closely with the families, designing programs, mentoring fathers, and teaching weekend gardening workshops. Every morning, Mia ran down the hallway like it was home. She had her own little cubby, a bookshelf of her favorite fairy tales, and a small desk beside the window where she often sat and drew for hours. One day, while Isabella was reviewing donation reports, and Daniel was leading a parenting circle, a volunteer came rushing in, holding something with both hands. She finished it. The young woman whispered, eyes gleaming. It was a painting, bright, colorful, full of sunlight. 3 people stood together in a blooming garden. A woman with golden hair, a tall man holding her hand, and a little girl in the center. Beaming at the bottom in careful, slightly wobbly letters, was written, "Family is not what you're born into. It's who stays and loves you anyway." By Mia Rivers. Isabella brought her hands to her mouth. Daniel, standing beside her, looked at the painting for a long time. Then he turned to her, eyes filled with something deeper than joy, something like peace. That afternoon they hung the painting in the main hall right above the entrance. Visitors stopped and stared. Some smiled, some cried because the truth of it was undeniable. Family was this. A few hours later, the center quieted. The sun stretched golden arms across the floor. Mia came running, breathless. "Daddy, Mummy, can we go outside?" The garden's glowing. They followed her through the back door, stepping into the soft light of the early evening. The garden Daniel had planted was now full grown, sunflowers tall and bright, lavender bushes dancing in the breeze, and rows of vegetables that the children had tended with their tiny hands. Mia twirled through the blossoms, laughter trailing behind her like petals in the wind. Daniel reached for Isabella's hand. She took it, her fingers curling into his like they had always belonged there. No words were needed. They walked slowly side by side as Mia skipped ahead. The camera pulled back, catching the 3 of them from a distance. Framed by golden light, blooming life, and the quiet magic of second chances. No longer broken, no longer lost, just a family, whole, healing, home. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to Soul Stirring Stories. Every like, comment, and tap on the hype button helps us bring you more stories that heal, inspire, and move the soul. because sometimes the smallest voices like Mia's hold the biggest truths. Thank you for watching, and remember, family is not just who you're born to, it's who chooses to stay. See you in the next story. Music.